Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Kind of. I just got done playing the chess game on chess.com, and I was going over the game, and so it's a little easier just to record a video than to than to type. So it's literally just, I'm just reviewing a game that I played with somebody real quick. So this is kind of really a personal video. So anyways, and I'm mad because I'm supposed to be eating right now, bro. So you got me over here reviewing this game. But I'll say what I have to say about it real quick. This is gonna be like a super duper short video. It's, like I said, it's just a personal video. So all right, so I went D4. So like I said, I'm taking and claiming the center. I got C4, E5 that I'm trying to control. Of course, if you allow me to, I'm gonna go E4, right? And I'm gonna control all these squares, right? Like if I can get E4 in, right? That's like my ultimate goal. So you play C5. So of course this kind of messes that plan up a little bit because you are attacking my pawn right here. So this is a common theme, whenever you play D4, you have, or even E4, you have C5, which is the Sicilian, and that basically tries to shut down you playing and getting this perfect pawn center, right? So, you're trying to trade one of your wing pawns for one of my central pawns, which is very logical. The only thing is, of course, you don't really know openings like that, but, the Benoni is, it's kind of lost by force. That's the thing. It's like, you can kind of throw people off, especially you play like the Banco Gambit and things like that. But, it's not really something that somebody's going to play, like, usually to just win the game because it's really, really bad for black. But anyway, that has a logical point behind it. That's why I said the move was good. So I pushed pawn, of course. That's going to be the best thing to do is push D5. So you went knight to F6, which is still very logical. I went C4. I'm just protecting and reinforcing my center. A lot of the times in this situation, you see the Banco Gambit, which is B5 and A6, right? But so far, you've kind of done what you needed to do. Especially better than the last game. So, you pushed a pawn, one pawn, which, and the problem with this particular situation, it doesn't really do a lot for your development. It kind of lets your queen out, but, you're not trying to move your queen this early in the game anyway. So, but you did develop the knight, like I said. And then I told you, I said, hey, man, you got the knight out. Now you're trying to work on your bishop. So you go G6, which is like what I wanted you to go. You don't really want to go E6 in this position. You don't really have great spots to put your bishop. So, yeah, putting your bishop on G7 was the most logical thing to do. I went knight to C3. I'm trying to control more of the center. I do want to push E4, right? So you play bishop to G7, and I went ahead and went E4. And after you castled, I told you that you don't really castle in this position. You really want to go, instead of castle, you really want to go D6 first. So this is like a branching point right here in the game. Because, of course, you went castles in the game, which would allow me to push E5. But I said I'll save you on that. But this is normally what you see in a Benoni type of structure. Because, I would love to get E5 in and displace your knight somewhere. Right? Put it on the rim or something ugly like that. But D6 prevents it. Also, it allows your bishop to come out. So it's a very logical move, and you can always castle next move. It's not like I'm attacking you, down like a completely open file or something like that, right? But like I said, you did go castles, and I told you I'm not going to push E5. I'm going to give you a chance to try to do the D6 thing. So I went ahead and moved bishop to D3 to allow you to hit D6, and you went knight to H5. So I was like, wrong. Like that's not what you want to do. Like your knight is really doing nothing on this square. So it's just kind of like, what is your goal with the knight? You can't put it here, right? You'd have to move queen to C7 to put it there. But, you can redirect it there, but then it's kind of like, what is it doing there? So, this is not the right kind of time to make that move. And all you really kind of did was just move the knight away, and you're probably going to end up having to move it back. So what I did was I just developed my piece, knight to F3. And then you went D6 here, and then I went to move H3. And so, in this type of situation, when you have a Benoni, it is very common for white to go G4. You have the bishop usually placed right here, and you can back the bishop up. And because one of the major points that you want to try to hit in a Benoni is this pawn here. So a lot of the times in situations to try to open yourself up, you can hit this. But I was getting a little bit too advanced. But, at some point, I'm going to push G4, and your knight is going to get knocked back to where it came from. So you pretty much did nothing. So that's what you want to try to avoid. So you want to try to avoid moving pieces multiple times in an opening for kind of no reason. So that's something I was kind of attacking before. And so you went knight to A6, which is a very common move, just simply because, you really don't have the C6 square. So it's normal to go like this and then just back it up here. Sometimes you see people kind of go that, but I can just go bishop back to B1 and you did nothing, and I'm pushing A3 soon. So, it just doesn't make any sense. So I castled. And then you did this move, bishop takes H3. And I was like, okay, I don't know what this is supposed to be doing, so you just pretty much gave up your bishop for a pawn. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say on that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just... I am kind of open with my king, but your queen is not really in a position to come and attack me. So this was not really a legitimate... this was not really a legitimate... what's it called? Sacrifice. So, I mean, you kind of need to go bishop to d7. But these are all things that people know, like, when they're theoretically, like, versed in playing the Benoni, which, of course, you're not. So... but anyway, we played forward. So you went to move e5, which is probably not like the worst move in this position. I mean, you know, you are kind of getting your queen a little bit out, but I went ahead and took on e6. You took on e6. And so I went ahead and just, you know, put my bishop on your queen like, hey, man, I'm just getting my bishop out. Your queen has to move somewhere like that. And so after you move queen to c7, this allowed me to go bishop to, you know, knight to b5. You moved over to f7, which, I mean, this is a very logical move in this position, just simply because, I mean, now you're hitting my knight, right? So this was like actually a really good move. So I went ahead and, you know, I went ahead and protected it with king to g2. I'm not worried about knight to f4 but check because your pawn is hanging here on d6. Like I mentioned before, as a white player of d4, playing against the Benoni, usually d6 does become a problem at some point, and you notice that once you push e5, this greatly messed up your chances of trying to defend this d6 pawn. So it's always something that's going to be in my mind. But this is like advanced, like opening type of ideas and stuff in, you know, in this particular opening that I know. So you did go knight to f4 with check, and then pawn or bishop take f4, and then you did go e5, which does attack my bishop, so I don't have time to go knight takes d6 now. So I just backed up the bishop to g3. I got my king in the right position to be able to, you know, take care of this knight. So I'm not really too worried in this situation. Plus, I'm up a piece because you did sacrifice your bishop. So you went bishop to f6, which I'm not really sure what that is, but that allows me to just take, you know, d6. So, you know, that's just something that you weren't paying attention to as far as d6 being attacked in that position. In this position, you probably could have did, I mean, you know, maybe move rook over, or, I mean... maybe you could have moved like queen here or queen there or something like that. I mean, that would have been fine just to protect this pawn. But you kind of have to babysit this pawn when, I mean, I'm attacking it. Because if I'm allowed to go bishop back and move my queen up and move rook over, I'm like really hitting this pawn hard. So, you know, you kind of have to contest me some kind of way. But, you know, my main point that I was making is, I mean, you know, you didn't do like that bad in this game. You know, it's just... you kind of have to know openings a little bit. I mean, you know, you at least have to know a little something about openings with it. So that's kind of comes into play a lot like that. But like I said, I mean, you did make logical moves. In the other game, you just moved a bunch of pawns and that wasn't that good. So at least you moved the knight here. You prepared to get your bishop out. So, I mean, everything is looking good up to this point. But you really, like I said, I mean, basically what you can do in this position is push e5 and your knight is pretty nicely displaced. You know, it's like, I mean, you're probably going to have to go back to e8 or even over here. And then I can move knight to f3 and protect this pawn. So it's like I have just achieved like the ultimate center. And d6, as you can see, d6, like, I mean, it basically makes it kind of impossible at this particular moment. I can't push this pawn right now. So, you know, you're just reducing my ability to do that. But as you can see, you know, the Benoni is kind of cramped just simply because, like, I mean, you don't really have the natural developing squares for your pieces that you'd like. And that's kind of what c5 does after the d5 pawn push. But like I said, I mean, you did fairly well. When you're in this position here, you can play e6, you can play d6. Like I said, knight to h5 didn't really do much for your position. It's not... if you're redirecting it to a better square and I kind of have a hole in my position, that's one thing. But like I said, knight... so you have to... so one of the things that you need from what I've noticed what you're doing is you're moving the same piece multiple times in the opening. Once you've moved it to a good square, I mean, you're good. You know what I'm saying? Like, you already moved it to f6. So, I mean, f6 is a perfectly fine square for it to sit on. So if you do push d6 at some point, your knight can pretty much live on, you know, f6 for a good while. And you already opened out your bishop. So just like in this particular position, since I gave you a chance to move, you know, d6, the game could have went on something like this. You could have went d6. You know, I would have went like this because I don't want this bishop to g4 coming. And then, you know, you could have went here. The idea in the Benoni is basically to make it to where you can push a6 and push b5 and you're trying to get queenside counterplay. But that's like kind of advanced as far as like, you know, advanced concepts. But, you know, this is kind of something that you could have seen as far as trying to develop your pieces. You just didn't really pick the best opening to try to like illustrate, like how to kind of develop your pieces. But if you noticed, the way I was doing it, like, so it's like I claim the center. You move G6. I went ahead and moved knight to C3. And some openings, it's not like that advanced. Like, you don't have to know like a bunch of theory. It's just basically just using opening principles. So the stuff that I was telling you the previous game is I moved my pawn out, and I freed my bishop. My queen is available to move, but you attacked my pawn. So it's like I kind of have to try to figure out, do I want to defend the pawn or do I want to push the pawn? So I decide I'm going to push the pawn. You go knight to F6, so you're attacking my pawn again, but it's not really under threat. So I just make sure to reinforce it with a pawn. You go G6, I move my knight out. You go bishop G7, I go E4. So as you notice that when I'm playing the game, I'm making like one movements each time unless I'm provoked to do something else. I'm not playing like the type of chess where it's like trying to anticipate any type of like certain movements from you. I'm just developing my pieces, and I just, whenever you do place threats, I'll just deal with that threat at that time. So you castle, and then I do go bishop to D3, which just develops another piece. The knight goes to H5, I develop another piece, knight to F3. You go D6, I go H3, because this is something that's very, very annoying in the Benoni is when bishop to G4 comes. So it's prevented with H3. You got knight to H6. I got castles. And then you do this here. So this really turned us a lot left. But at this point, if you notice, I've touched this knight once. I've touched this bishop once. I've touched this knight once. I've castled my king. I'm not in any danger. You were saying like, when you castle, you get messed up. Yeah, but it's like you can't think like I can't castle because I'm going to get messed up. Because if you don't castle, you're going to get messed up. So don't even do that. But like I said, you notice that I'm touching each piece once unless I have a good reason to touch the piece again. Once you did this and I took, and then you went all of this stuff right here, I went ahead and developed my bishop with tempo because now I'm hitting your queen. And if you notice my position, I have all of my pieces out. I've touched everything one time. Once you slid your queen over here, like I'm basically almost pretty fully developed and I'm up a piece. So I can afford to start kind of like, using my pieces now to attack you. Knight to B5, it wasn't an accuracy a little bit, but it attacked your queen. It forced your queen to move. I'm wanting this D6 pawn. So I have even though it's not the best move, I have a reason why I'm moving knight to B5. You went queen to F7 and place a legitimate threat on my knight. So then now I have to try to defend it somehow. So I go king to G2 and I'm perfectly fine doing that. And then we did this. And of course, you checked me on F4. So I'm going to take with the bishop. And I was anticipating you taking here with the queen, which would have made it kind of hard for me to take D6. I would have had to move the bishop back here and did something like that. But you didn't. You pushed D5 and I went back. And so if you notice, like I could say, let's say right here, whatever, I attack you here and I move king up. And let's say, for example, like, you attack my bishop, with the pawn or whatever here. Like I could have been making some type of move that prevented you from doing that. Or like, let's say maybe I didn't even move bishop to G5. Let's say I move bishop to E3 or something, which would have been a logical move. But the thing about it is like, I'm not going to not go to this square just because you can attack me at some point with your piece. Because it did, like I said, it came with tempo because I'm attacking your queen. So, like I said, you were saying before, like when you played B4, you were like, oh, I wasn't wanting queen to A5. You can't play so defensively that you're playing bad moves and you're making like your position like not be all that it can be. So like I was saying with B4 in the last game, D4 that you pushed was good, but it's like you didn't have to push B4 because there was literally no reason behind you doing that. So, hopefully, you kind of got like, and then this was just a pawn. Once you move bishop to F6, I just took the pawn like I wanted. So, and I'm just good to go. Like I'll be able to move the knight back. And I'm attacking your queen. So depending on where your queen goes, I can even take this pawn too if I want to. Like, just kind of seeing how things develop. But this is like super great position for me. But hopefully from the stuff that I said, you got like some type of knowledge out of it. Like, and you kind of understand a little bit better. It's just the level that you're at. Basically, the thing about it is you are at a position at your level that you just have bad habits that you like are implementing, and that's your thought process. So basically what has to happen, and this is what I had to do like a bunch of years ago, I had a lot of bad thoughts and bad habits, and I would do that same thing. I'll bring my queen out early. I would like place, like I would just like hit, you know, different points with like the same piece, and I wasn't developing the rest of my pieces. So what I had to do was basically like unlearn all of my bad habits that I had established and relearn like the right way to play. So that's literally what you have to do. So you have to go from, you know, your natural impulses, which is I got to move this piece twice, or I got to move my queen out early, or I got to move all these pawns in the opening. You have to unlearn that stuff and learn the right way to do it. And that's the only way that you're going to get better. And so the thing about it is, you know, it's a process. It's not like, you know, you're just like, oh man, like after you get a couple pointers, you're about to be like 500 points higher. It don't happen that way. Like, you know, it's a process. It took me like a whole year to go through these different books that I read and like basically undo the bad crap that I was doing and try to understand like how valuable doing these things are. So don't think castling's bad. Don't think like, you know, oh, I'm gonna get attacked and stuff like that. But it does take some theory that you have to learn too. So that's like a whole different level. But like the first thing you have to try to do is to like, you know, pinpoint what you're doing wrong. And I mean, it's easy for me to see what you're doing wrong. I can look and see what you're doing wrong and give you like little pointers. And then it's just a matter of just working to try to like undo the stuff that you're thinking, undo your thought process and building a better thought process. So yeah, that's all I had to say. It took a little longer than I thought, but I mean, I didn't feel like sitting there typing forever, and you got to punctuate, and you got to do all this stuff. So it's like, dude, I'm just gonna record a video, man. It's easier, dude. So I don't know. Yeah, I will. I gotta get something to eat, bro. So I'm gonna holler at you one of these other days, man. When I come across you again on chess.com. So I'm gonna holler, bro.